Good. Well, welcome. This is nice to have such robust attendance. We will have another busy week, and I'm delighted to say what I've been doing already this morning. I just came from a press conference sponsored by the county executive where we are appealing to lawyers to devote pro bono time to assist unaccompanied minors, refugees from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. We are asking lawyers and paralegals and anyone who has the time to assist in some of the pending green card casework. Under federal law, these unaccompanied minors, of whom we have about 1,200 today in Montgomery County, are entitled to legal representation. That does not mean they get legal representation, and some of these cases are pending for a long time. The unstatus is certain. These children are victims of shocking circumstances, and we have no choice, and Montgomery County Public Schools is doing a superb job of absorbing them and working with them, but these are very, very needy cases, and what we need, especially right now, is for lawyers to devote pro bono time to reducing the backlog of cases. So that was the announcement. Then after that, I just had an excellent informal meeting with Shane Robinson, the chair of our House of Delegates delegation, and as I've said before, I'll say here, I think the cooperation at this moment here in this building among council members, with our school board, with our legislative delegation, and between counties is better than I've ever seen it. And I do think that the presence of Republicans is probably helpful for Democrats. I think Democrats are working together in a more cooperative manner. Of course, we did receive the outlines of the governor's budget. I read Bob McCartney's column in the Washington Post where he said it could have been a lot worse. I know a lot of people are saying that. The governor's a smart man, and so when you go around warning everybody that 100% of GCEI is going to be taken and you only take 50%, the result is everybody says, whew, what a relief, we're only getting a 17 million hit. That's smart. You know, I acknowledge a smart politician, and Governor Hogan is, you know, clearly acting in a smart manner. He's using the power of his new office in an intelligent way. So we're looking forward to ongoing dialogue with the governor. We're encouraged by many things that are in his budget, and I believe Steve Farber will be handing out our latest analysis of the Montgomery County specific effects and specific items. If you look at the capital projects, you know, many of our priorities have been funded. I mean, there's $1 million for Strathmore Hall. There's $2 million for the National Cybersecurity Center of Excellence. These things were not deleted. So I have not seen evidence of any vendetta against Montgomery County. And so we are looking forward to working with the governor and continuing to make our case that we are, of course, the largest county in the state, that our needs are real, and we're looking forward to a very productive dialogue. I have a public hearing Thursday night on my bill affecting pet stores and whether pet stores can get puppies from breeders located outside the state. Last week we had a very raucous hearing on a bill offered by Councilmember Leventhal relating to pesticides, and then, I'm sorry, the puppy hearing is Tuesday, and the Thursday hearing is on sick and safe leave bill offered by Councilmember Leventhal. So Council President Leventhal is keeping very, very busy keeping track of a bunch of legislation offered last year by Councilmember Leventhal. I think Council President Leventhal is kind of aggravated that Councilmember Leventhal is clogging the council's agenda and requiring so much time with so many policy initiatives introduced before I became president. So I'll yield at this point and see what you all have on your minds.
Regarding the announcement this morning about seeking legal aid, you said 1,200 minors. Has the number changed at all? I mean, is the county still seeing more unaccompanied people coming here? Has it stopped? What's sort of the latest you have on that?
Well, the number has increased each year. The estimate that we get comes from the public schools, and so the most recent estimate of 1,200 is based on how many were enrolled at the beginning of the school year. I don't have any update on what happened in October, November, December.
Do you know much about their circumstances? For example, are we talking younger kids, elementary, middle, high?
All of them.
And in terms of how recent their arrivals are, how recently have they come?
Well, that would be a question to direct to the school system. We did have a briefing on that before the holidays. It's been, you know, the surge has been occurring over the last 3 years. It's our hope that those numbers may diminish and that we won't see such an influx. But for those who are here, it is urgent that we reach out to our legal community and seek pro bono legal assistance to reduce this backlog with immigration.
George, specifically what kinds of court proceedings do you need the pro bono counsel for?
It is an immigration proceeding to receive a green card. It's not a work permit, it's not temporary protected status, it's a green card, as I understand it, based on refugee status. But I'm not an immigration authority, so you should source that from sources other than me. Nestor Alvarenga, who is County Executive's Legate's Latino liaison, can provide you with the specifics of the immigration procedure. But the outcome is a green card. But the backlog is substantial, and it takes capable lawyers to whittle down that backlog and assist these kids who are living with uncertain status today, but who are entitled to public education according to the Supreme Court.
What about CASA Maryland? They've worked very closely in this community.
Right.
They've worked with people on immigration
That's correct.
issues. Are they saying they're tapped out? They don't have the resources to?
Well, CASA participated in the event this morning, and
Right.
and what's needed is more pro bono lawyers, more than, Catholic Charities is very much involved, the Archdiocese of Washington, CASA of Maryland also, and each of those organizations have, you know, some legal staff, but really it's a highly specialized field, and we're asking for more help.
You say there's no vendetta that you can determine.
Not yet, I haven't seen it yet, no.
In terms of the process, is there another, this isn't it though, is it? Is this the final picture, you think, in terms of state aid?
Well, we have the budget, maybe Mr. Farber can.
Yeah, we're going to have a meeting with the Office of Government Relations at 12:30 to get downstairs. And one piece of information they're bringing has to do with BRFA, and what that apparently includes is some of Governor Hogan's ideas about future years and how different kinds of local aid may be restrained in their growth compared to current patterns. Again, this afternoon, the Department of Legislative Services in Annapolis will be presenting a more detailed analysis of the budget, including its impact on counties. We'll know more then. But I think you're right, Bill, there is more information yet to come. We haven't seen the full detail of the budget yet.
And clearly there are other decisions pending. I mean, the governor will be offering some tax proposals. We anticipate he'll be taking a run at the water quality protection fee. Although he did include funding in the consolidated transportation program for the Purple Line, he said that that is still pending review. So there's still major decisions pending, and you know, it's a 4-year term, and as each issue comes up, we're going to study it, you know, the effect of his proposals on Montgomery County. But I do share Mr. McCartney's opining that it could have been a lot worse.
The money for the Purple Line, is it enough to keep it going? In
Yes,
your
it's
opinion?
right on track. There's been no change.
But this year, in this budget, it's just the sort of beginning money, the bigger money would come in succeeding years, correct? Like if the federal government was to say we're giving.
Well, we're on schedule to get a full funding agreement from the federal government this spring. I mean, things have to move at a very rapid pace. This is a right now decision. The awarding of the public-private partnership contracts was postponed. It was going to occur in January. It was postponed to March. But you know, there's some very near-term decisions that have to be made, and everything's favorable. I mean, the green, you know, the strong interest from the private concessionaires bidding on the P3, strong interest from the federal government, a very strong letter from our congressional delegation, both U.S. senators and 7 of 8 members of Congress. So, you know, everything is favorable. It's just, you know, we need to settle the question and move ahead.
Can't the governor just decide, can he just tell the feds, we don't want the money?
He can.
He can.
He can do that, yes.
What window of time would that come in?
He says there's a study. I mean, as I say, the deadline for granting a contract to the concessionaires was extended to March. So that's a fairly near-term go or no-go decision. He announced that the money in the Consolidated Transportation Program is a placeholder and that the project was under review. He did not provide an end date for that review. He did not say, you know, how it corresponds with the pendency of the legislative session. So I'm as eager to know the answers to those questions as you are and as everybody else is.
But it would seem like March is maybe a deadline because.
March is a very important deadline. Yeah,
That's the next deadline, I guess.
that's the next major deadline. Yeah.
In addition to his budget, though, the governor also put the kibosh on several regulations that were ready to go through in Maryland. What's your take particularly on either the environmental ones or the one that would have prevented some discrimination against Medicaid recipients?
If it were up to me, I would have allowed those regulations to go forward as they were drafted in the O'Malley administration, but that's not my call to make.
Do they have an impact locally?
I'm not in a position to answer that yet. I don't think we've analyzed those.
About GCEI.
We can get back to you on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
About GCEI, I mean, despite the creativity of his political maneuver, what are we talking about realistically on the ground with a $17 million impact?
It will fall to us to appropriate the school system's budget as we do every year, and we're going to appropriate every bit as much as we can based on the resources that we have. And we'll know more about that in March also, when we have the most up-to-date revenue estimates, and it's up to the county executive to begin that conversation. He'll try to identify all the resources available and devote as much of them as we can to our school system. And I think we can backfill a $17 million cut. But, that's another whole conversation. If we restore $17 million that is cut by the governor, under current law, that $17 million would be added to our MOE target, that doesn't seem fair. So we've asked our legislative delegation to amend the law so that if the cut comes from the state and the county restores it, that it isn't up to the county to keep that floor in our MOE funding threshold. But we'll see how our colleagues in Annapolis respond to that suggestion, which we have made.
Do any of the compensation cuts affect what the county has to pay in terms of pensions and?
I believe the answer to that, go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
that was one of the biggest cuts in the budget. It was $156 million for state employees. That's one of the biggest areas, along with cuts to Medicaid providers.
And
But-
the University of Maryland.
And the
Yeah,
university.
the university system.
But in terms of retirement, that is to say, teacher retirement and so forth, the budget provided full requirements.
I wanted to backtrack on the Metro incident at Leventhal
Sure.
Plaza and concerns about, I recall Montgomery County firefighters expressing some concerns about operations in DC and the encryption. Do you see a connection there somewhere in terms of the ability of DC to work together with Montgomery County
Yeah.
in a crisis situation like that?
All the information I have on that comes from WTOP and WAMU. But I know that WMATA is backtracking on its failure to have operable communications in the event when the smoke was filling the tunnel, and clearly that's something the WMATA board is going to have to look at. We have a discussion scheduled very soon with our T&E committee with the WMATA board. I know that our regional congressional delegation has been pushing WMATA very hard and asking a lot of rigorous questions, and WMATA's got a lot to answer for.
How do you see that having an impact on what the county is trying to accomplish with more livable, walkable, metro-accessible communities?
Yeah, Metro is the spine of our smart growth plans, and we are very, very reliant on Metro now and in the future. And this is also going to be a challenge for the new governor. I mean, the entire Washington, D.C. region is a transit-dependent region, and we're going to need an ongoing commitment from the state of Maryland to our most heavily populated area.
George, you mentioned the pesticide hearing last week. It was a long hearing, and a lot of
Yeah.
people testified, and obviously it was installment 1 of 2.
Yeah.
But what can you tell us at this point? I mean, did you hear anything that may be changing your position on this, or should we expect amendments coming to this legislation based on what people are saying at this hearing?
I think some things probably need to be clarified. I mean, for example, when the gentleman said that he needs to be able to use fungicide on trees, and I let him know that the bill in no way stops him from being able to use fungicide on trees, and he read language from the bill. He didn't read the appropriate language from the bill, but, so if we need to clarify what we do intend to achieve and what we don't intend to affect, clarifying language is fine. I can't speak for all of my colleagues on this issue of playing fields. It's my understanding that there are superb playing fields in the provinces in Canada that have taken this step, and some of the assertions that I've heard just don't sound reasonable to me on their face. Canada is a very, very large place, and so the suggestion that our soil is unique and totally different from thousands of square miles of Canada, I find hard to take. So, the experts and highly credentialed people who make their living applying these chemicals, it's not surprising that those highly credentialed people would like to be able to continue doing work as they have been doing. But I'm also receiving anecdotes of people who have been exposed to accidents, who have been doused with clouds of pesticides from routine application, and we even had the Department of Agriculture found that the company that was applying these pesticides in Leisure World was found not to be adhering to appropriate safety requirements. So, I think these lawn care companies want to maintain the status quo, and I understand that, but we also have lawn care companies emerging here in Montgomery County who are applying natural and organic mechanisms and thriving and doing very well. And in fact, we have data showing that in Canada, since the enactment of these rules in a majority of provinces, the lawn care industry is growing substantially, that it's doing better in Canada. So, so I think I take the complaints of affected industry seriously. We are listening to affected industry, but we maintain our goal that we want Montgomery County to be the safest and cleanest and healthiest county in the United States, and that we are going to apply a precautionary principle, and that where, clearly toxic chemicals are being used for the purpose of having somebody's lawn prettier, when indeed you can have a very, very pretty lawn through a different mechanism. I think the principle behind the bill remains the right principle, that we want to protect our children, we want to protect our pets, and we want to protect the Chesapeake Bay.
George, why do you think the idea for this bill has such a small footprint in the United States, in other jurisdictions here? My understanding is it's not.
Well, a majority of states have been preempted a majority of states have preempted the ability of local governments to do this. And Monsanto and other chemical companies are, very free and loose with the use of political influence. And, I think there are many, many areas in which we would do well to follow the lead of other Western industrialized countries, including Canada, but we're a little slower. Our political process is more pervious to corporate influence, and so, what I'm seeing, the influence of the chemical companies in particular, and the lawn care companies, I can understand that it could be decisive when this issue may come up in other jurisdictions. I don't think it will be decisive here.
You mentioned the Sick and Safe Leave bill. There's also a proposal at the federal level and at the state
That's correct.
level. How do those impact what we're going to be doing here? I mean, could we see a delay or any change in?
So this issue is on the near horizon. It's coming. This is going to become an expected requirement of employers in the next few years. President Obama spoke to it very strongly. It's going to become a principle, especially for Democrats, but there will be Republican support as well in the coming years. So whether the federal government eventually moves in this direction, I don't anticipate that President Obama's interest in this will persuade the Republicans in Congress. We're working very closely with the sponsors of the bill in Annapolis, and Delegate Ariana Kelly, who's one of the champions of the idea, spoke at the committee meeting that I convened. I'm in frequent contact with her and with other colleagues in Annapolis. And so, as with all bills, I think, they're not enacted 100% as introduced. Concessions get made, clarification gets made, and I think that will occur in this case. What I don't want to do, because, I would prefer to see a strong protection passed at the state level. The bill's been introduced the last couple of sessions, and it hasn't made its way out of Annapolis. So I'm working in partnership with our colleagues in Annapolis, so that, if we're going to make concessions, we don't weaken the possibility of passing a strong bill in Annapolis, and vice versa. And I can't tell you how that will come out, and we're very cognizant of what's going on in Annapolis, and it will come before the HHS committee, whose agenda I control as chairman, and then it will come before the full council, whose agenda I control as president. And so I won't act on the bill until I have an understanding of what our action does with respect to the bill which I support in Annapolis.
Ideally, what form does that take right now, 7 days for?
It's for each 30 hours worked, you get 1 hour of sick and safe leave, up to a maximum of 7 days in a year.
You talked about your festival bill, you said the hearing's tomorrow.
The hearing is tomorrow night on the puppies and Thursday night on the sick leave.
Okay, can you talk about the festival bill? Talk about what it does just briefly, and also
So why go forward with this? And are there other jurisdictions in the U.S. that have these laws?
There's quite a few. There's several states. What it does is it says that you cannot procure puppies from breeders outside the state and sell live puppies that come from breeders, that if a store in Montgomery County is going to sell live puppies, they may only be rescue animals. And it's the most popular bill I've ever introduced. And I've been an elected official for 12 years, and it took me this long to realize that people love their puppies. Where have I been?
When you talked about the pesticide industry fighting this, are you getting the pet industry fighting this?
Yes, the pet store industry is opposed to it.
And their argument to you is?
They should be able to do whatever they want to do. But who are we to step in and tell them good business practice or humane business practice? That's not our role.
But there aren't that many places that sell puppies.
No, in fact, as of today, there are none under our jurisdiction. There is one located in the city of Rockville. And I'm in contact with Councilmember Julie Palakovich-Carr of the city of Rockville, and she's told me it's her intent to make their law consistent with our law when we act.
And would this affect the breeders, they call themselves hobby breeders, AKC type breeders who breed in their home?
So an individual would not be prohibited under my law from acquiring puppies from breeders. What my bill affects is pet stores.
But are breeders able to operate in the county that don't sell to a pet shop?
The answer to that is yes, this bill affects pet shops. Yeah.
Given that the enforcement landscape here is pretty sparse, I mean, there's no stores in the county that...
Right.
Is this really the best use of everybody's time?
I don't think it'll take a lot of time.
Huh?
I don't think it'll take a lot of time. It's a valid question, but, you know, we enact a lot of protective legislation. I don't think it will take a great deal of time. This was requested by the Humane Society of the United States. On its merits, it struck me as a good idea, and it's been overwhelmingly popular. It's received a better response than any bill literally I've ever introduced, and I've been a councilman for a long time.
Is it very symbolic?
I think that there's a concern about inhumane treatment of animals by breeders, and that as everything, all the information I'm getting suggests that that's a real and valid concern.
But I guess kind of going back to his question, if the problem doesn't exist here, are you treating a wound that's a phantom? I mean, if
Well, a pet store could open in the future, so this would create a legal framework where no such pet store could open in the future. And obviously, the Humane Society of the United States is trying to build support for its approach to this issue and have a longer and longer list of states and localities that have done this.
talk to the pet stores that exist in our county and
Yes.
are not using this practice,
Yes.
and why are they not using this
Yes.
practice? Is it because they agree with the overarching principle here that is inhumane and they don't?
There are large chains, you know, PetSmart comes to mind. There are others that are in the business of selling pet equipment and pet facilities, and as far as I can tell, they're very profitable and they're doing very well. It's a different business model. And they will assist customers to get in touch with rescue facilities. And our county rescue facility has wonderful dogs and cats available for adoption today. And that's really the message, is if you want a pet, you should rescue a pet. And, you know, so many people I know have done that and, you know, have had happy experiences, and that's what we're really trying to steer good outcomes. I have a bird. I don't have a dog or a cat. And I acquired my bird from a pet store up in Rockville that does not sell puppies. But the pet store owner talked to me yesterday, and she doesn't like my pup. Her name is Ruth Hanessian. I have a parakeet. It sings beautifully. We bought the parakeet for my mother-in-law, and she grew up in Brazil, and having birds, you know, was a common thing. It was a Mother's Day gift in 2012, and my mother-in-law, blessed memory, is no longer with us, but the bird is still with us, and the bird brings us memories of my beloved.
Doesn't recite the zoning code.
Excuse me?
Doesn't recite the zoning code or anything.
No, I've tried to teach it the zoning code, but I haven't been successful.
I'm looking at the draft and I'm terrible at numbers and things like this. In looking at transportation grants to municipalities and pothole repair grants, I'm seeing in the 2016 column.
Those were cut.
Negative one, so
Right,
gone.
they were cut.
What's the impact of losing pothole repair grants? Nobody likes potholes.
Well, we fund potholes through the county.
So that's not a big deal for us?
Well, it was $992,000, so, that's a cut.
It was a temporary program, and the governor decided not to continue.
That doesn't affect the ability to patch potholes here, or
It will clearly affect our ability to patch potholes, and the Transportation Committee will discuss that in the course of its budget. I mean, some of these things we're going to have to backfill. I anticipate, in Health and Human Services, which is my committee, I anticipate we're going to have to take a hard look at what we can afford to backfill with county dollars. And I think the message to that is that this will be a difficult year to launch new initiatives with county dollars because the state's in constrained circumstances, and we're going to have to backfill a lot of these cuts, including the GCEI cut.
And where it says transportation, just to be clear, does this include the purple line figure?
No, it does not.
Okay.
No, this is the operating budget.
Okay.
Okay, the purple line is in the capital budget.
Question about the ITA, the Independent Transit Authority
Sure.
that's being worked on.
Right.
Was there a briefing on this on Friday? Were council members briefed on Friday?
I've been briefed one-on-one, and I think that's the way council members were briefed. At 12:30 today, the county council will discuss it, along with other pending matters, in the routine meeting that we have each week with our Intergovernmental Affairs Director, Melanie Wanger. That conversation will take place at 12:30 today. The House delegation will have a hearing in this building Friday evening at 6:30. And then when the bill is referred to the Healthcare and Transportation Committee, there will be another public hearing there, so in Annapolis. So there will be ample opportunities for members of the public to speak out now. And then all this bill is authorizing to empower the county council to act later. And before the county council acts later, if and when we do, there will be ample opportunities for public input then. So, I got a call over the weekend from a constituent exercised about this, and she said to me, I can't believe they introduced a bill without having a hearing. Well, actually, the way we do things is you introduce a bill and have a hearing after the bill's been introduced. So I certainly don't intend to exclude public input. This is an important question, and there will be ample opportunities for public input beginning this Friday evening at 6:30 before the House delegation.
So this notion that there was some kind of violation of an open meeting law because you guys got a briefing on Friday, that's incorrect?
I don't know what that refers to. I didn't get a briefing on Friday. I got a briefing weeks ago, one-on-one, which is not an open meetings law violation, and as far as I know, council members have been briefed individually, which is fully legal. I don't know what happened on Friday, do you?
No, there was
I don't know what
nothing
that's referring to,
particular.
yeah.
Of course, all of this is on the county website.
Yeah, and the county executive has put up his own website explaining the proposal with Qs and As that are, frequently FAQs that are, I think, really quite descriptive and helpful.
And just to be clear, this state law is only enabling legislation.
correct.
The county has to still go through the process of
That's
action.
correct. That's exactly right. Okay, anything else?
Do you have any thoughts on this Blair Ewing, the proposal as far as
I have not taken a position myself on that yet. I'm going to review the entire issue of the bus depot. I'm going to review the entire issue of the Blair G. Ewing Center. What is the condition of its current facility? I hear it's very bad. Does it make sense to relocate to the facility they've identified? I have not come to any conclusions on that. I'll be studying it with great care.
And then I just had a question about the e-cigarettes bill.
Sure,
I think
yes,
you had
absolutely.
a,
That was another big hearing last week.
yeah.
It's
So,
Councilmember Florine's legislation.
right,
Yeah.
so I was curious, similar question to what Kate asked before, was there anything that was new for you that, at the hearing, or any points of view that maybe would lead to amendments in the future?
I'm quite confident we're going to enact that bill. And we're going to treat e-cigarettes like we treat cigarettes. So, my sympathy in this case, and actually Chip Berman, who runs the Out of the Way Cafe, testified to this effect. My primary sympathy goes to restaurant owners who, we've imposed a lot of rules that they need to comply with. If you have someone lighting up something that, to the naked eye looks like a cigarette, for you, the restaurant owner, to have to police whether it's a traditional cigarette or a newfangled cigarette seems a burden that's just unfair. The health effects of both smoking the thing and the secondhand smoke are uncertain, and applying a precautionary principle makes sense to me. We are not banning these devices. Individuals who, as some testified, need to get their nicotine fix can continue to do so, but they should not be able to do so in public. But I have so many constituents who are really exercised by secondhand smoke. It aggravates their asthma. It really concerns them, it scares them, and so if someone's sitting next to you and they appear to be lighting up a cigarette, it just doesn't seem fair to then have to explain, well, no, it's a new type of cigarette, it's a different type of cigarette, it's a cigarette but not a cigarette, and we just ought to treat them uniformly, and then also adding penalties for the sale of these substances to minors, and making these poisons, the concentrates that you use to activate the device, childproof. So, I mean, I think it's a really solid proposal. I'm a co-sponsor of it. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do, and I'm confident that we will enact it. And as far as the public hearing was concerned, overwhelmingly, the witnesses were in support. Mr. Bariano lobbies on behalf of the tobacco industry, so he was against it. We knew that. And then you had two nicotine addicts, self-described, and I wish them all the very best. And if they're using these devices to cope with their addiction, you know, I have nothing but good wishes for them. But I don't think that ought to entitle them to light these things up in public and scare people and make business owners have to worry about whether the business owner is violating the law. I don't think that's fair.
Had there been a problem with sale of e-cigarettes to minors, or was that something we were measuring already?
Well, we had a lengthy briefing on this in the Health and Human Services Committee, and there is no enforcement. So it's illegal under state law, but there aren't penalties. Unlike other things, I mean, you can lose your store if you sell alcohol or tobacco to minors, but the state has not imposed penalties yet. And, you know, I mean, look, Bruce Bariano is very effective. I mean, you see, it's not, you know, we are somewhat more like-minded. It is somewhat easier and quicker to get legislation done here in a body of 9 people. And so I anticipate we will move ahead of the state. And when we do so, as in the case of prohibiting this, tobacco cigarettes in bars and restaurants, I anticipate the General Assembly will follow our lead as it has done in the past.
Bruce seemed to suggest, though, that the county didn't have authority to enact this bill.
Well, he's incorrect about that. He's free to assert whatever he wants, and he's highly compensated for doing so. But he's incorrect about that.
Okay.
Do you have any opinion on the discussion about Dr. Starr and his contract?
That matter is not before me. I don't have a vote on that matter. I'm not going to opine on that. That's before the school board.
One last question. Have you been following the case of the free-range parenting and their interactions with CPS?
Yes, I've been following it,
Did
yes.
you have any comment on that? Or how
It's really difficult. The parents have gone very public, and they've been talking to the media, and they've been very critical of county government. But county government is adhering to privacy rules, which are in place for very good reasons. And so county government does not feel that it can make its case to the media. And, you know, I think that puts the hardworking, well-meaning people in Child Protective Services and in the police department in a very difficult position, because they just don't feel that they can respond when the parents are going on the Today Show and mounting a big media campaign, you know, really promoting their philosophy. So that's a problem. These matters remain confidential and are under strict privacy constraints for very good reasons.
Yeah, but haven't parents effectively waived that by going public?
Well, look, I spoke with Donna St. George about this. I mean, I think each decision was made with good intent. I think in their totality, the decisions look like a mistake. So, you know, it's nice to be able to go back after a bunch of decisions have been made and say, we should have known. But good Lord, if something terrible had happened to those children, some of the same members of the public who are now saying Montgomery County is overprotective and has been haranguing these parents would be saying, how could the county have let this happen? So we operate under a protective principle, and we respond, the county responds when allegations are made of child abuse or child abandonment.
Some of these confidentiality rules, don't you think they're just, agencies fall back on them just to avoid transparency about this?
I fully understand why reporters would feel that way, and I'm sympathetic to reporters' point of view on that. So it is challenging. I mean, we run into that all the time. You want to aggregate data, you want to understand how effective you're being, but there are federal rules guaranteeing privacy, and you'd have to talk to the lawyers as to whether, you know, the appearance by these parents on the Today Show has the effect of waiving the county government's obligation to adhere to privacy rules. I can't give you a legal opinion on that. It's an interesting question.
Do you think that this could lead to looking at maybe some of the, I mean, I know the law is at the state level, but maybe looking at some of the language in the law to include I've heard people suggest language like if the kids if they know where they are and their parents phone numbers, and the CPS can get in contact with the parents, then maybe it would be a different situation.
Well, number one, these are state laws we're talking about.
Right.
So they wouldn't be before me.
Right.
I'm sure questions will arise about this in my committee, and I'm seeking more information, and I have been in touch with the department about this. I'm very reluctant to make the laws, protecting the safety of children more permissive. There's got to be a very high standard, because I've heard too many shocking stories of children in unsafe circumstances. So as best I can tell from what I've read in the media and what I've heard from the department, it appears that these children were safe and loved by their parents, and that this matter is going to be brought to a close very soon. But that doesn't mean that in every case where there's an allegation of child abandonment and child abuse, that the children are safe. And it's a very tough job to be one of these child protective services workers. You're dealing with families in terrible circumstances. There's a high burnout rate. So I'm really reluctant to second guess these, public servants who are trying to do the very best they can and protect children. I think, as I say, the totality of decisions made in this case now, in hindsight, it appears that there were some mistakes. But I think each individual decision was made with good intent and was well-meaning, and based on an interpretation of state law.
Will your committee be having a briefing on this result?
Not on this specific case. I don't think it's warranted. It seems to me the parents are very eager to get a lot of attention to this, and I'm not inclined to take up a specific client case governed by confidentiality rules. But in general, I'm sure it will come up. I mean, we will go through the budget of Child Protective Services. I'm sure there will be questions asked, but I'm not going to have a committee meeting just on this topic, just relating to this family. I don't think that would be. I'd get accused of seeking attention and playing to the media, and I don't think that's my role.